The Transformers franchise is one of the most successful action franchises of all time. The series started in the early 1980s when they came out with all sorts of toys, comic books, and cartoons that became instant hits. It wasn't until the early 2000s that they started working on big-budget movies under Michael Bay's leadership, but they missed out on a whole lot of characters in the past 2 decades. Let's talk about some of them. First up, Ultra Magnus. If not for Michael Bay's live-action film series, the massive Transformers franchise would have been forgotten past the 2000s, but despite the fact that Bay's movies may have rescued the franchise, their content has been lacking, especially with characters like Ultra Magnus, who could have at least been introduced in The Last Knight, but little did you know, this character almost made it into Dark of the Moon before Sentinel Prime took his place, then was scheduled to appear in The Last Knight, only to be ditched one more time, although he has also served as Rodimus Prime's second-in-command in the final seasons of the G1 animated series, or even Optimus Prime's superior in the animated continuity. Ultra Magnus usually appears as one of Optimus Prime's main lieutenants. There's no doubt that he's an important character, and fans are begging for a live-action appearance. Ultra Magnus is renowned for his outstanding combat skills, fast decision-making on the battlefield, and ferocity in the first generation of Transformers. But he's never the top dog. Not until later generations, when Optimus Prime goes missing at least, Ultra Magnus generally chooses to act as a lower-ranking official and places a heavy focus on joining the team and making an impact that way. Next up, Dinobot. Dinobot is probably the most loved by fans out of the original Beast Wars animation. Fans can probably remember the Cybertronian T-Rex Grimlock from Age of Extinction as the leader of the Autobot group known as the Dinobots in the 1980s television series. But the Beast Wars Dinobot isn't a group. It's a single character, and it has a lot more depth than you might expect from a character on a kids show. Dinobot debuted in the series as a badass Predacon, but one who was motivated by a warrior's code of honor rather than a mad thirst for power. Dinobot eventually joins the brave Maximals, although out of convenience, but eventually turns against his master Megatron. With lots of ego clashes and headbutting, Dinobot's union with the Maximals isn't an easy one, but as time passes, Dinobot loses some of his cold exterior and starts to consider his strange allies to be actual friends. The episode Code of Hero, which is widely regarded as the best in the whole Beast Wars series, is where Dinobot's redemption arc comes to an end. In this episode, a single Dinobot makes the ultimate sacrifice in order to foil Megatron's ingenious scheme. It would be amazing to see this robotic velociraptor on the big screen, even if his character journey is far too complex and deep to be properly shown in a single movie in which he would just have a supporting role. Now for Scourge and Cyclonus. Scourge, a familiar character recast as the commander of the Terracon group, is the apparent main villain in Rise of the Beasts. Due to his truck alt mode, it seems that the live-action Scourge will have to draw some comparison from his version in the 2001 Robots in Disguise anime, who was a Decepticon doppelganger of Optimus Prime. But in the original animated movie, the Scourge nickname belonged to a different character whose partner, Cyclonus, has grown to be a fan favorite. As improved versions of Starscream's Seeker Lieutenants, Skywarp and Thundercracker, Cyclonus and Scourge made their film premiere in 1986's The Transformers the Movie. In a bizarre reversal of the Megatron-Starscream relationship, the cartoon character Cyclonus served as a loyal, crafty second-in-command to his insane master Galvatron, who was also known as the reincarnated Megatron. But the Cyclonus interpretation that appeared in the IDW publishing comic More Than Meets the Eye in 2012 is probably the one that's most popular. Cyclonus is portrayed by author James Roberts as a serious, committed swordsman with a sympathetic spark hidden under his icy appearance instead of a cruel Decepticon. Needless to say, with both Scourge or Cyclonus being such popular characters, it'd be amazing to see either of them on the big screen again after almost 40 years. Up next, Sunstreaker. Sunstreaker makes sure that everyone else is aware of his superiority over every other Autobot. He knows it to be the core of his being. He's usually a troublemaker looking for ways to cause trouble for the other Autobots because of his sociopathic tendencies, huge ego, and arrogance. When it comes to criticizing the flaws of others, he's generally hesitant to help those who are having problems keep up and is incredibly vocal about it. Only his twin brother Sideswipe and he get along well, and even their relationship has some problems. The fact that Sunstreaker is so successful in battle is probably the main factor in Optimus Prime's decision to keep him around. Sunstreaker is a ruthless combatant that excels in all styles of combat, which makes him a great asset for the Autobot army as a frontline combatant, although a scary one. He's unquestionably a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, which ensures his spot on the team. Sunstreaker is a character who transforms into a bright yellow hot rod. He hasn't been featured in any movies, but he'd be an awesome new addition. Next up, Springer. There is no better moment to introduce Springer than in the upcoming movie, because his Autobot counterpart was the first triple changer of his group, until Bumblebee brought Blitzwing to the big screen. Springer, who first appeared in the 1986 film, is a triple changer who can transform into both a car and a helicopter, and has become best known as the commander of the Wreckers. There's definitely space for him to appear in the next film trilogy, maybe as the commander of a more realistic version of the Wreckers than the ones shown in Dark of the Moon. However, Michael Bay appears to have confused him with Drift in Age of Extinction, showing Drift as a triple changer, which he generally isn't, and with the same vehicle modes as Springer. Now for Coop. Coop is an intriguing Autobot that was initially presented in the 1986 film and is usually regarded as an old pro with the wisdom to pass on even to Optimus Prime. Although he's mostly linked with G1, he has made a number of additional appearances afterward, with his most recent in the Cyberverse being the most famous. His appearances have generally preserved his look and personality, a lot like Bumblebee and Optimus Prime. Although in hindsight, he didn't actually miss much. He did lose the chance to appear in The Last Knight as one of the Autobots seen fighting in WW2 due to his military background, but he deserves to be seen on the big screen, and maybe the new movies will give him the opportunity. Moving on, Perceptor. It's surprising that Perceptor hasn't already made an appearance on the big screen, considering that he was one of the first main Autobots from the early seasons of the G1 cartoon series. Even then, it's probably for the best after what Dark of the Moon did to Wheeljack. Perceptor is actually the brains of the Autobots along with Wheeljack, of course. He's a brilliant scientist who's constantly seeking information, but isn't very skilled in combat because he's mostly just famous for being the smart Autobot. He also has a habit of speaking in an extremely poetic way, a character quirk that peaked in the Transformers animated TV series when he was dubbed entirely by a text-to-speech computer. Animated started a pattern of showing him as an off-road survey vehicle instead, which continued until his most recent appearance in the Cyberverse, and would be a great fit for him if there were ever a live-action movie made for the Cyberverse narrative. But it's probably best if Michael Bay decides to ditch his original alternative form as a microscope, because that would just seem a little weird for a live-action movie. Now for a big one, Omega Supreme. Omega Supreme is a huge, incredibly strong Autobot who first made an appearance in the G1 anime series. He can transform into a full-fledged combat station. With a tank and rocket, Omega Supreme has maintained a pretty constant appearance throughout the years, including big roles in Animated and War for Cybertron. Although Animated takes the character on an interesting path by making him the Autobot spaceship, he's mostly known as the most powerful weapon and final line of defense for the Autobots. But still, Omega Supreme's size might make it hard to transfer him to the live-action cinema, but it would still be awesome to see such a big transformation on the big screen. Next up, Warpath. While we're on the subject of tank-like Transformers, let's talk about Warpath. Although having a tank mode is generally associated with Decepticons, Warpath is an exception. A lot like Coop, Warpath is an old Autobot that appeared in the first seasons of the G1 animated series. Warpath is a lot more unique though, because his tank mode's cannon continues to work in robot mode, sticking out of his chest and allowing him to fire at his enemies. This characteristic, combined with the fact that he wears only red, has been a fairly constant element of the character across time. It's a pity that he hasn't made an appearance in a movie yet, because his loud and flashy attitude would be awesome on the big screen. Not to mention he's even been in the timeline of the movies through comic books and video games. Last but not least, Blaster. Blaster is the Autobot equivalent of Soundwave, changing into a cassette player and having his own gang of mini cassettes. He was a beloved character in the G1 animated series, but sadly hasn't made any major appearances in the past 10 years. Blaster is very different from his Decepticon counterpart and arch enemy because he's loud, energetic, and has a passion for all genres of Earth music, especially rock and roll. Who doesn't like some good old rock music? The future films would be the ideal setting for him to return, as well as all the other characters we mentioned today that would fit right in with the rest of the Autobots. But what do you think? Would you like to see any of these characters on the big screen? Let us know down below. And that's it for today, my friends. If you liked the video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.